bipolar female. Black 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 bipolar female. I am not my hair, I am not my skin. I am a vessel of love and soul within. I am black bipolar female. I am black bipolar female. I am not my hair, I am not my skin. I am a vessel of love and soul within. I am black bipolar female. I am black bipolar female. Let me tell you where I've been, who I am, what I do, why I stand, how I live, what I think, what I love, what I am. Black bipolar female. Yes, ma'am. Many questions you could ask, what I don't know I will pass. I will help you understand all the ups, all the downs, all the smiles, all the frowns, all the whys, all the hows. Walk the journey with me, the road is full of wows. We can learn together, we can grow forever. We can learn together, we can grow forever.
Hello. Please introduce yourself and your book.
My name is Kara Stevens. I'm founder of the Frugal Feminista, which is a financial wellness platform committed to helping women of color and their allies heal their relationship with money. And the title of my book is called Heal Your Relationship with Money. It is a 28-day guide to understanding your money why, letting go of past financial dysfunction, and making peace with your money life.
Do you feel that your relationship with money is completely healed? What does that mean in your life?
I think that the concept of being completely healed is very subjective. What may be healed for one person may be part of their healing process for another. What I will say is I've made a lot of progress along the road of what my relationship with money looks like in very tangible and very intangible ways. So from an emotional perspective, I don't have the same triggers. I don't have the same anxiety around money. I don't have the same fears around money. And even for the fears that I still have, the intensity isn't as strong as they were before. And on the other hand, the external forms of health will be, being some of the routines and practices around paying bills on time, not taking on more debt than you need, living within your means. Those are great signs of quote unquote being healed. And then even more so is being able to pursue your dreams using money. So the healed part also comes with this idea of, do I know how I want money to be a tool to help me be happier, or use money as a tool to help me buy more time to do the things I love with people that I love? Or on the converse, no longer do things that I don't want to do, and how money can support you in taking your time back. And I would say even finally healed may also look like a certain number in your checking account or your savings account, or the presence of a will, or the presence of some of those touchstone points in your financial foundation that exist or beginning to exist. So that's why the question, if you're looking for something concrete, I would say some of those allow you to see if it's healed or not, or in the process of being healed.
What has been the biggest positive impact in your life since you gained financial literacy? Why have you chosen to share what you have learned with the public?
I think the biggest, impact of financial literacy and it being on my life has been at two levels. It humanized my experience in the sense that I was able to think again about what was really important to me, because I didn't have these burdens of other people's expectations on me. And what I mean by that is sometimes we look at the world, or we look at life after maybe we've gone to college or graduated from high school, whatever the kinds of milestones we're expected to reach as Americans, or even just larger society. And sometimes it kind of boils down to getting a job, surviving, and rinsing and repeating. But I think what financial literacy did for me was offer me an option to move from surviving to thriving and dreaming about what would I really want out of life if I could have resources or find the resources to do so. And the reason I think I share my story is because I think a lot of Black women have been taught that they're most useful helping other people reach their financial goals, with a career that they may not love or income that may not really support them. And I think that teaching and sharing my experience about, one, how I got into debt, number two, my feelings about the experience of childhood trauma around money, and then the journey to get better and better understand myself without shaming myself and giving myself grace, I think gives other Black women and other people who listen to the story who can relate, independent of gender or race, the permission to do the same and to think that if someone else could do it, they can do it too. So I think overall, the story humanizes the process of that particular type of transformation.
Wonderful. How has reconciling your childhood emotions related to how money has impacted your relationships with your parents?
And that's a complicated question, but I would say that for me, there have been different stages in that process. I've gone through a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of resentment as part of the process. And I think finally, as an adult with my own child, I've come to offer grace while still holding two sets of feelings. So you can give grace to a person who was doing the best that they could with what the knowledge that they had and still feel like there was harm done. And as a parent, understanding that I may unintentionally inflict harm on my child in a way that I may not be aware of, and it still will be done. And so I've come to a larger place, independent of being a parent, of acceptance that these are the things that happened, nothing can be done about them. And it's ultimately my responsibility, if I wanted something different, for me to be able to pursue it. And so my relationships with my parents with respect to the childhood trauma around money, I think have come to a place of, like I said, acceptance, but also more than acceptance, it's a deeper understanding of what it's like to be a single mom, be without support, trying to do the best for your children in a different country, and understand the challenges that come with it. So I feel like the stories have more context now that I've gotten older and seen a little bit more about life, while still being able to honor that what I needed wasn't there in some ways, and also giving a fair assessment and perspective that some of the things that I did have were a lot more than others have had, and being able to have a more balanced understanding of things could have been worse and also things that could have been better.
You quote the Hawaiian prayer, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you." How do you think forgiving yourself, how important do you think forgiving yourself is to your financial success?
I think it's a huge part of your financial success, no matter how you define it. Even if financial success is a function of peace and being able just to have progress and make improvements, a lot of times you can't have your your mind and your emotions in two places when you're trying to set a goal. So if you're having this conversation that is largely ruled by your inner critic that berates you every time you make a mistake, that reminds you of your past failures, that you know uh, adds layers of doubt to your goals, it becomes very difficult to pass and silence that noise, in order for you to actually even attempt to try. And then when you're not able to do it on the first go, give yourself the chance to try again. And so when it comes to forgiveness, I think it's a key part of being able to say, I accept. I accept what has been done. I accept the circumstances under which I did them. I accept the context in which they happened, and I'm going to move forward. And I think that's what forgiveness is. And you do your best to take the lessons learned and apply them to your future steps and goals when it comes to your finances.
You talk a lot about overspending or oversaving in the book. Do you think there's a happy medium, where you're not spending or saving too much? And do you think that's the best way to manage your money?
I think that money, yes. So I think that when we look at typical personal finance advice, it's focused on people who tend to overspend because most Americans, don't have much in their emergency savings. A lot of us are in debt, and there's several categories of debt that many of us have, from mortgages to car loans to business loans to personal loans to student loans, like credit card debt. There's lots of places for us to get debt. And so the question of overspending and under saving, or over saving, is a question of what's important to you at this time in your life. I think if you kind of move forward with what do I really want out of life at this point, you'll be able to get more clarity and more streamlined about how you spend. So that would be the equal medium, I would say. And then for some people who may not have ever had an experience of, well, what is it that I really care about? Like, how much does it really cost? I think it's a great place for them to start, because you begin to see how much does it actually take for me to live aligned with my values. And I'm not saying everything that I want to do will be taken care of all the time, but for the most part, if I can get clear about, say, in your case, Natasha, I've known you for decades, and I know writing plays is an important part of who you are as a writer. And so if you were to have budget lines that are around getting spending on lessons on how to be a better playwright, taking classes on it, traveling to a writer or a playwright retreat, those kinds of things, it makes sense, right? And then also being clear about other things that I want to do in this particular category in my budget. Is it putting me into debt? So being clear about where that falls, and I think you'll be able to find your balance. I think a lot of times in the world of personal finance, extremely prescriptive, and you should do this or you shouldn't do that. And I think there's more of an intuitive element that is often missing, because sometimes we like to outsource our lives to other people to tell us what to do. And the medium balance, or the balance, comes from being open to believe that you know what's best for you, and it's just a matter of reconnecting with that voice and then finding that balance. Some people need more money in order for them to need more money in general, because they like to do a lot of things, or they like to experience a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to afford it. Other people may have one or two categories in their lives where this is where they're putting a lot of their money into. And then some people, just very low maintenance, low cost people. Doesn't make them better than anyone else either. It just is. And so I think being able to figure those things out for yourself help you understand where that balance is, and then also those larger financial goals. Do you want to be able to have a down payment on a home, if that's important to you? Or do you want to have enough money to live in a certain part of town and pay that rent? Do you want to have a certain type of car? Do you want to have a certain amount of money in your 401k or your 403b? So then those other kind of questions come into those other structures.
Wow. Well, I think you really went into, what motivates different people and how that can motivate how you, manage your money. So now that you're living in Ghana, what has the move from the US taught you about, your financial well-being?
I think it's really opened me up to so many different things, how culture definitely plays a role in how people respond to money, what it's like to, just for example, in Ghana, I find, and it's only been after like 8 months so far, is that conversations around money are more indirect or unspoken, which for an American person can be extremely challenging, I would say. So say, for example, I was wanted to hire somebody and I asked, well, what's your rate? Right? What's your rate? And they said, oh, madam, whatever you pay me. No, 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 no. What's your price? And so I think with older people, there's this kind of, whatever you'll pay me. But then at the same time, if you pay them too low, they're like, madam, I want more. Oh, so you do know how much you want. So just tell me so I can begin to negotiate. So negotiation happens in the market. But when it comes to individuals, like you can haggle for 10 CDs this or 5 CDs off this or something like that. But when it comes like to hiring for a job, it seems it's, and this is my experience with women, has been, and even men, they'll be less direct. And so as an American, that's been, it's helped me be thoughtful about what do I think is fair and understand my own standards and then move from there. So there's one. I think two, I think that moving to another country, a lot of people think as a bonus to moving to a country that may not be as developed as the States is that everything is cheap. I would not agree. I would say things cost less, but they're not cheap. So it'll be easy for you to move here and then find yourself running out of money because you keep on doing conversions in your head. Well, it only costs this amount in the States. Well, you're not in the States. You're here in Ghana. So sometimes your conversion, you may be putting yourself at a higher expense level than you may realize because you're doing that conversion when you should be thinking in terms of what does a typical Ghanaian, even if they have a little bit more money, how much would they pay? What's that typical amount being spent? So I would say that's a huge piece. But I would say third is that it has been the foundation that I've laid over the past 20 something years has enabled me to live a life that I'm not sure I would have been able to live in the US at this age. So some of the supports that I've been able to receive at home, some of the schools I've been able to afford for my daughter, I know I couldn't afford in the United States. And so I find that quality of life has definitely improved for my family and for myself. And I think that what it showed me is that there's this idea of I get to choose what I want out of life. And if, say you want to be a millionaire, Natasha, right? Well, I could be a millionaire somewhere. It doesn't have to be the States, right? If you go to a place where it allows you to live that way. So I think it's opened my mind to what exactly are we looking for? And are you willing to move for what you actually want? And just redefining that relationship with even identity and nationality. So I would say that was a mouthful, but I would say that.
No, that's excellent. Thanks for going into detail about that. I think a lot of people are really thinking about how expensive it is to live in the United States and what it would mean to move to another country, with a different cost of living. Not necessarily it has to be a lot lower, like you said, but would give you more flexibility to do things that you wouldn't be able to do in the US. So I think
and I'll say this one last thing to that. Sorry, not to cut you off, but I wanted to be clear that there are things that there are goods that are imported here that are actually more expensive than in the States because they're imported. But say, for example, you go to the market, which is locally run by Ghanaian market women, where things are fresh and they go from the farm straight to the market where you can buy, kind of like a farmer's market, the equivalent in the States. That cost is cheaper and fresher than what you would get in a typical supermarket here. So I've kind of cost compared and seen that prices vary depending on the type of lifestyle. And it's kind of going to that point that you want to live. So you can live high on the hog, and kind of maintain a Western style of living. But if you kind of put some more time into looking for viable alternatives, you will find it at a lower cost and possibly higher quality.
Awesome. Well, you've already mentioned that we have an established relationship. We've known each other for quite some time. I know that you listen to a lot of other podcasts, and you want to give a little background, I guess, into our relationship or why you wanted to come on Black Bipolar Female, in terms of, I know you feel like mental health is definitely related to financial health, and I believe the same way. You know, when I was manic, I spent money like without any regard for how much I was spending. So I know firsthand that when you're suffering through a mental health crisis, you can be very extravagant, and people don't really understand. They don't understand why you're spending the money you're spending. You know, they don't relate it to the illness. They relate it to like, well, oh, you know, she's just being extravagant. Like, you know, they don't relate the two and don't really understand why, you know, your mental health is impacting how you spend your money. So, but from your perspective, how important is financial health, you know, and also related to mental health?
Well, it's extremely important. I think that I've had personal experiences of people who have died by suicide because of their finances, that they were deep in debt and they felt that the debt carried so much shame and was so overwhelming and there was no way out, that the best way to end their suffering was to die by suicide. So there are those extreme cases, but there's other cases that are equally worthwhile to acknowledge instead of kind of judge from like that very puritanical, judgmental, you just are irresponsible, you're just out here doing things that you shouldn't do. And people who have a lot of anxiety may be triggered to spend to escape. You know, they may be triggered to spend or hoard because of fear. And so I see just in my own personal experiences and people around me the impact that finances have on your mental health. My mom, just growing up with a mother who was greatly depressed because of finances, and it led to hoarding, it led to clutter, it led to feeling boxed in. And she wasn't necessarily diagnosed because there's definitely stigma as a Caribbean immigrant in a foreign country to go get uh, diagnosed in a country that she may not feel trust in their system. And so the reason I talk about personal finance from this perspective and not even really talk about budgets and spreadsheets like that, because I think those things become traps early on in the conversation, if not rolled out in the appropriate sequence, if people have experienced trauma or have a lot of mental and emotional, I would say, challenges around their finances. And so having a trauma informed perspective around finances is a key way to make finances inclusive to so many different types of people who may feel locked out of the traditional forms of financial supports. And even to kind of touch on why I wanted to kind of come back to the podcast is because I think that even conversations around Black women and finances and have been kind of always it's not ableist, but it definitely is not directly noted and named the different type of women that the information supports. And so I would love to make sure that there, if I'm supposed to be for Black women or women of color, that I'm for all Black women and women of color in the various ways that we show up. And so just being sensitive to that is why I think, you know, plus we're friends after all these decades, that why you want to, you know, lend your platform and share my passion for our communities in that way.
Any final words or advice?
If you feel like this conversation really made you feel seen and made you feel heard, and you wanted to do deeper work, I recommend that even if you don't pick up my book, you pick up a book around your emotions and money. But if you wanted, and I can leave some free resources for your community, Natasha, so they can kind of get a taste of the book so they can see for themselves if it resonates with them. But I think it's worthwhile to explore that self. You owe it to yourself to have the relationship with money that you know that you deserve, but it may be a challenge and you haven't found the actual resource to help you get started. So I would say that.
Can you just say the name of your book again? I know you also have another book. Just give some more information about your books in particular and where they can
Sure.
find them.
Yep. So the one that we're talking about today is Heal Your Relationship with Money. And the other books I've had are they're all helpful, but to this community in particular, the other one is Unmasking the Strong Black Woman. And those are more essay forms, which I think is really important when you put essays around money together, because it humanizes the conversation. I don't come from a place of I've always had it right, I always got it right, I always knew it. I didn't. It was a journey, and I think the essays in there also talk about the intersectionality of race and gender and mental health, and the ways in which money help or sometimes hinder, depending on our relationship with it, to actually overcome some of those hurdles that we have in our lives as women of color. So those two books may actually be helpful. And the final book, The Happy Finances Challenge, which is also a good book. They're all good books. I'm just, if I do say so myself, but it's The Happy Finances Challenge, I think should be read third, because the first two really kind of do a deep dive into the emotional and the narratives around money. And then the second book is more of the tactical, but there's always an effective approach and a compassion, trauma-informed approach to budgeting, to getting out of debt, to financial boundaries. So I think in the series, that Happy Finances Challenge is more of the outer work, the systems and the structures, while the Heal Your Relationship with Money and Unmasking the Strong Black Woman talk to the cultural and then the emotional and mental health elements of personal finance.
Well, thank you so much, Kara.
Thank you, Natasha.
This is Natasha saying, stay strong, stay healthy, and know that you are loved.
We can learn together, we can grow forever. We can learn together, we can grow forever. I am not my hair, I am not my skin. I am a vessel of love and soul within. I am black bipolar female. I am black bipolar female. I am not my hair, I am not my skin. I am a vessel of love and soul within. I am black bipolar female. I am black bipolar female. Let me tell you where I've been, who I am, what I do, why I stand, how I live, what I think, what I love, what I am. Black bipolar female. Yes, ma'am. Many questions you could ask. What I don't know, I will pass. I will help you understand all the ups, all the downs, all the smiles, all the frowns, all the whys, all the hows. Walk the journey with me. The road is full of wows. We can learn together. We can grow forever. We can learn together. We can grow forever. Black bipolar female.